All right, good evening. We'll just give it another minute or so, waiting for some additional people to join. All right, we'll get going. I'd like to open the February 7th meeting of the Wakefield Conservation Commission. First thing is we'll take roll call. And Haley. Oh, I see you, Haley. Jim, I don't see you. Jim, are you there? Ken,
Here.
Paul,
Here.
Peter,
Here.
Teresa.
Here.
Okay. All right, first up is the approval of the minutes from January 17th. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding those minutes? And if not, somebody'd like to make a motion to approve those.
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Haley, you're muted.
Helen muted? Is she muted?
She is. Haley.
Yep.
Okay. Ken,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
and I also vote to approve the minutes. All right. I would like to officially welcome Haley. She has been sworn in as a newest member. Haley's been an associate member for about a year at least. So welcome, Haley. Officially.
Congratulations.
Welcome is right, Haley.
Hey,
All right, first
I'm no
up, we
longer
have-
the newest member. Congrats.
thank you.
all right, first up, we have DP 313621, which is 71 Whittier Road. We did do a site visit. Diane Purcell, public hearing, notice of intent for the construction, a 700 square foot addition in the buffer to BVW. And John, I see you're here for that.
Yes, hi, John Ogren, Hayes Engineering. I was not present at the site visit, so I'm not sure what transpired there. Hopefully the commission saw that the proposed addition is essentially in an area that's already lawn. There's a good kind of barrier in the form of a fence along the back of the rear yard, and then the wetlands beyond that. If there's no real discussion about the site visit, I did submit a revised plan that I'd like to go over.
Yes, please do. Yeah, the site visit, most of the commission was there. We did see the property slab construction, already aggressed back area, fence separating the landscaped area from the resource area. And go ahead and share your screen, John. We do know DEP provided some comments, which I know you've included on the latest revision.
Yeah, the reason for mostly this revision as a result of comments that were made by the DEP. So in going over them, essentially they had to deal with showing erosion control on the site. So we've added a straw wattle Basically here, it basically follows just inside the fence area and continues around to the other property line. We've doubled up on the straw wattle. One of the other comments was in terms of stockpiling any material, soil on the site. We showed this temporary stockpile area, and again, we've doubled up the proposed straw wattle in that area. Some of the other comments related to the extent of the excavation and construction. As we've just discussed before, I've added kind of an excavation line, which is pretty much be the extent of the excavation for the footing. Again, this is just a slab construction. There's no basement to this. So essentially we'd be going down about 4 feet below the existing grade to put in the footing and then filling that back up. So I don't anticipate a lot of excavation and not much beyond the actual proposed addition itself. As far as there was comments about the proposed grading. We did not show on the original plan proposed grading because essentially, as you saw, it fairly gently slopes down from the existing house to the fence. We weren't anticipating really making any changes to the grades out there, pretty much holding the existing grade that's there. But I did add some spot shots that kind of reflect the existing grade, just to reinforce that the proposed grade will essentially match the existing grade. Only other thing I think that in the comments was there was a talk about there's a discussion about considering planting a shrub tree buffer layer between the addition and the BVW. As I'm sure you saw on the site visit, there is some bushes. You know, the edge of lawn is here, and then there is some landscaped area there. And we're anticipating that, you know, maybe some of those need to be moved during construction, but essentially that would remain. And I think that pretty much summarized. Oh, there was one other thing. They did talk about stabilization during construction. We did add some notes to the plan that talked about, you know, erosion, you know, inspecting the erosion control. If for some reason there's exposed areas, exposed soil that it's going to remain exposed for 14 days or more, that it should be a layer of straw mulch should be put down to help stabilize that. But again, as I'm sure you noticed, we're not dealing with steep slopes on this site in the area of the construction.
Yeah, it's pretty flat. Okay, any questions from the commission? Any
I have a
questions?
question, Bob.
Sure, Haley, go ahead.
Is that the fence line, that that back part of the square there?
So this kind of this line with the X in it, that would be
Okay, gotcha.
the fence, and then this is with the circle is the proposed straw wattle.
Thank you.
Any questions from the public? Rebecca, do you have anything?
I do not.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Haley,
Yes.
Jimmy, Jimmy muted.
How about that?
I can hear you.
Okay,
In favor of closing?
Jim, are you in favor of closing the public hearing on this?
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes.
you. Can you hear
Okay,
us?
yes, I am in favor of closing the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Ken,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
and I also vote yes. Let's see, 7:12. Do we want to talk about a order of conditions? We have a few minutes. Standard order,
Bob,
yes.
would it be appropriate to have I mean, one of the things that I think gave all of us comfort when we went to the site was the existence of the fence. Would it be appropriate to condition this on the that continued maintenance of the fence,
We could,
or is that unnecessary?
I mean, there could be something in there that if the fence isn't there, that there is a barrier, shrub barrier or other type of barrier in there. We could add something like that, potentially.
I think it's a good idea.
I like that idea too.
I think the DEP comments covered, any concerns that we would potentially have. Rebecca, do you feel a standard order with that additional condition is proper?
Yeah, I can't think of anything more that I would add, really.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to issue a standard order of conditions with the additional condition that Peter made?
I'll make that motion.
Oh.
And I just make the motion.
And I'll
because I talk the quickest and fastest, so sorry.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Haley,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes,
Ken,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
and I also vote yes. Okay, Rebecca, you ready to move on?
I am, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Good night.
thank you, John. All right, next up is DEP 313620, 100 Hemlock Road, Northeast Metro Regional Vocational School. Review of revised plans, discussion of roundabout, and discussion of filing with ZBA. And just a reminder, I do see a lot of additional people have joined tonight. Just reminded to identify yourself. And if you are a resident where you live. And if you're not, if you're part of the applicant team or somebody else, identify yourself also.
So, have Mark Hurley, 24 Chapman Road.
Thank you. So that would only be if you're going to be asking a question or providing a comment.
That'll
Thank
be
you.
later on. I'm Ed Paris from 20 Chapman Road.
Okay, again, you only need to identify yourself if you're asking a question at some point or providing a comment. So thank you, though.
Thank you.
All right. Is the applicant ready?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, we are ready.
Okay.
If I may, I'll just start. Good evening. Thank you always, as usual, for your time. We know this is an involved project and appreciate all of your thoughtful consideration as we go along here. So just for the record, I'd like to identify the members of the team who are here tonight who will be addressing various aspects, including the comment letters and as well as the specific request by Ms. Davis to discuss the regulations concerning the zoning board and Dover amendment issues. So with me tonight, I am Julie Barry. I'm an attorney for the project. And with me is my partner, Rob Schlein, who has worked on many Dover amendment cases in the past, as well as we have from Niche, David Conway, who you know, and Paige Blanchard. From DRA Architects, we have Vladimir Lubetsky and Carl Franceschi. From Warner Larson, we have David Warner and Josh Milaneg. From LEC Environmental Consultants, we have Dan Wells, a senior wildlife wetland scientist, and Andrea Kendall. And then we have PMA Consultants, who you've, of course, have heard from many times. Kevin Nigro, Joseph DeSantis, Anthony Lopresti, and Marco Zappala. So I don't think we all intend to talk, but we're all available to the extent that questions arise that are within the scope of one of the team members' knowledge. I think we should be able to address all your issues. So with that, I'd ask the chair how the commission would like to proceed, and if we would like to, in the first instance, begin with Ms. Davis's questions and my letter to her concerning the Wetlands Protection Act regulations and the issue concerning Zoning Board of Appeals review of this project.
Yes, thank you. I think that'd be an appropriate way to start.
Okay, thank you. So the question has arisen, brought up by Ms. Davis. It came up at the commission's last hearing. And since then, she has since requested some additional information. So I'd filed a letter with Ms. Davis dated February 1st and copied, I believe it was to the ZBA administrator, Mr. Renaud, the town engineer, and Mr. D. Cristofaro, the building inspector, and we'd asked that the letter also be forwarded to the commission. So during the review process there was an email request on January 20th to Northeast Metro Tech concerning the application of the Dover Amendment under the State Zoning Act, which is Chapter 40A, Section 3 is specifically the Dover Act Amendment, and the effect of any relief on any relief that might be required as part of a typical zoning review process by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Now, the Dover Amendment provides in pertinent part that no zoning bylaw may prohibit or require a special permit for the use of land or structures by an educational use or the expansion of existing structures for primary, accessory, or incidental purposes of operating an educational facility, provided that such structures may be subject to reasonable conditions regarding bulk and height of structures, yard sizes, lot setbacks, open space, parking, building coverage requirements. And the question is, typically the issue that a zoning board or other administrative board is faced with in the first instance is whether the use constitutes an educational use so that it is indeed subject to the Dover Act Amendment. In this case, it's irrefutable that the use is an educational use. I see that Mr. Tom Mullen, Town Council, we've been in contact with regarding this use, and I believe that Town Council agrees with us that the use of this property as a vocational technical high school a regional vocational technical high school qualifies under the Dover Act Amendment as an educational use. So then at the last hearing, in regards to that, and in the context of when the project would be obtaining or seeking ZBA review, Ms. Davis raised the issue of the regulations propounded under the State Wetlands Protection Act, specifically 310 CMR 10.05 paren 4 and paren lowercase f, and the effect of any other required relief on the commission's review and decision on the notice of intent. So the issue is not that the zoning board is not entitled to review this project. That is not the question before the commission or the subject that anyone is interested in exploring. The zoning board is able to review the projects and base its review on those aspects that I discussed earlier, and to issue an opinion that is based on reasonable conditions. The zoning board doesn't have the right to deny the project or require a special permit of it. So what we envisioned was that the zoning board would be reviewing this project, and the notice of intent was filed. There isn't any dispute, by the way, that that's what the regulation says. We're all on board there. That, and the issue that was specifically raised by Ms. Davis was whether the commission could deny the notice of intent application outright, because the project requires zoning review, which it has not yet obtained. And because for practically speaking, this is something that would be honored more in the breach, because the board can't deny this project. So unlike a project where the Dover Amendment doesn't apply, because it's not an educational use or otherwise, this one of the avenues that the zoning board might choose to follow is denial of a request for zoning relief of some type or kind. It can't do that here. So for the commission to deny the notice of intent based on the fact that it hasn't obtained review by the ZBA yet, we think would be premature, and it would also be elevating style over substance here. Because while facially that's what the regulation says, practically speaking, the ZBA can't deny it. So this commission is not looking at having expended its time and resources on reviewing this project and then be concerned that the zoning board would then turn around and deny it. That's not an issue here. And in fact, what has happened at this board, at this commission, since the application is filed, are some modifications to the plan, shall we say, including most recently the modification that includes the change from a T intersection to a roundabout. And those are things that certainly the Traffic Advisory Board would be interested in reviewing for the ZBA. And certainly it's in everyone's best interest, not just the applicant, but the members of this town who serve on various boards, to be efficient where possible here. So it makes every bit of sense that this application would be filed with the commission first, since unlike the zoning board, the commission here has been able to institute changes and could deny a notice of intent, as it is suggested might be the case if it followed 310 CMR 10.05 paren 4 and paren lowercase f to the letter. However, we are suggesting that if that were the case, that would be an appealable decision to the Department of Environmental Protection for a superseding order of conditions under the Dover Amendment. So in addition though, since then, and I would also like to add the framework of the underlying statute to that regulatory scheme. And under the Wetlands Protection Act, where that bylaw, that regulation arises from, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, to obtain, the requirement is to obtain or apply for all obtainable permits, variances, and approvals required by the local bylaw with respect to the activity. And that means that those are only those which are feasible to obtain at the time the notice of intent is filed. Permits, variances, and approvals under the statute as required by the local bylaw could include zoning variances, permits from boards of appeals, permits required under floodplain or wetland zoning bylaws, and gravel removal permits. They do not include, among others, however, building permits issued under the state building code or subdivision approvals under the subdivision control law. So this is relevant because since my letter was sent to Ms. Davis, Rob and my other partner, Adam Brayard, who is handling the zoning board of appeals piece, has been in discussions with the building inspector as well as town council, Mr. Mullen, concerning exactly how it is in these circumstances where we have an undisputed educational use. Do we get this matter before the ZBA that doesn't go, it's not a ZBA application. So the question has arisen as to the proper procedure. And since that time, in discussions with Mr. Mullen and the building inspector, we have determined what the avenue for that should be. And at this point, I'd like to hand this program over to, or my presentation over to Mr. Schlein, my partner, who has been involved with the Dover Amendment issues here and is also working with Mr. Brayard on the Zoning Board of Appeals issues for his description of the process that we agree with town council, I think, and the building inspector should be followed here.
Good evening. So what we have discussed with the building inspector and town council is that we are going to file an application for a building permit. And we do expect that it will be denied on a pro forma basis by the building inspector. And the reason for the denial is, of course, the building doesn't comply with height requirements, for example. There's a certain areas of non-compliance. And we will then, and this is by agreement, we will then file an appeal of that building permit application. And the building permit application appeal, of course, goes to the ZBA, and they will be able to determine if the nonconformities are reasonable in terms of bulk and the other requirements of the Dover Amendment. So I want to point out that the regulation, as Julie says, specifically excludes the building permit as something that we need to have in place before the Conservation Commission can act. And that's going to be a little whiles away because we expect to file for the building permit tomorrow. Again, it's a pro forma application. We expect a pro forma denial after review by the building department, and then we will be in front of the ZBA on an appeal. Julie, I think that's all I've got on this point.
Rob. So whether it is analyzed as set forth in my letter, which frankly is not as relevant now given this new procedure, or it's analyzed as in the analysis under the State Wetlands Protection Act as to what is an obtainable permit, which the building permit is not, as we know, at the time of the notice of intent being before this commission, it is appropriate and so efficient for this commission to be hearing this project now. And particularly when you consider you have the peer reviewer consultant, BSC, who has reviewed all of the documents, who has weighed in with comments, who has received responses to those comments, and indeed modifications have been made to this project because of the back and forth between the applicant and this commission and its consulting peer reviewers and the public. And that includes up to and including the roundabout as opposed to a T intersection, which the town engineer has been behind as well. So I'm happy to entertain any questions. Either I can take them or Rob can take them, or if this answers everything, that's perfect. And we can then move on to the comment letter, which is the subject, also the subject of tonight's hearing.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. Rebecca.
Bob, are we gonna ask Tom to,
Yes, we are.
Okay.
I was first gonna ask Rebecca if she has anything she'd like to add or say first.
Yeah, actually, thanks for asking. It sounds like there might have been a miscommunication potentially on my part at the last meeting. I wasn't suggesting that the commission deny the project based on that regulation. I was simply reading the regulations, of which F indicated that you could deny it, and I was only stating that clearly that there is language in there to suggest that the commission has some regulatory strength in there to ask for it to be reviewed or to be obtained if feasible. So I just wanted to point out that I wasn't suggesting they deny it. But I do think that perhaps Tom Mullen would be the next person to ask his take on this.
Yes, definitely. Town Council Tom Mullen, would you like to weigh in on this matter?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. As you heard from Ms. Barry, I have been in touch with attorney Adam Brayard, who is representing the applicant in connection with the ZBA, the anticipated ZBA proceeding. And I understand that within the next 2 weeks, he is going to file from the anticipated denial of his application for a building permit to the ZBA. So in short order, the applicant will have, I expect, completed any obligation under 310 CMR 10.054E to apply for the one approval that it seems to me is at issue here, that being approval of the ZBA to the assertion of Dover Amendment rights here. As I understand it, the project will exceed zoning requirements with respect to height, parking, and landscaping. Perhaps there may be other respects as well, I don't know. In each case, the burden before the ZBA would be on the applicant to show that literal enforcement of these requirements would be unreasonable as applied to the educational use. And I certainly agree with Ms. Barry that this is an educational use. With the question, as for the question whether the ZBA's decision upholding the assertion of Dover rights would constitute an approval or not under the regulation, I'm not aware of there being any authority on that point, but I'd be content to say that it is an approval of sorts, certainly an approval in my mind, and I'd recommend to the commission that if you wanted to postpone final action on the requested order of conditions until an application has been filed with the ZBA, I think you'd be within your rights under those regulations. I'm certainly not suggesting that the commission deny or request the application before you now, or request a withdrawal of it. I mean only to suggest that you're within your rights in requiring that the applicant take the next step, which I understand they are trying to do as quickly as possible, of getting a friendly denial from the building inspector so that they can appeal something to the ZBA and test their theory that the requirements as to height, parking, and landscaping, and possibly other things would be unreasonable as applied to this educational use.
All right, thank you, Tom, for that clarification and advice. Is there anything else regarding this particular topic?
Can I ask a question,
Sure.
Bob? So, Tom, is it your understanding that in the building permit application, they're going to identify all the ways that it doesn't comply with zoning?
Yes, in fact, I think that's pretty much all that the building permit application will do. That is, it's not going to contain the kind of detailed construction plans that you might typically see in a building permit application, because we're not there yet. or the applicant isn't there yet. Instead, it is going to contain some site plans more at a conceptual level. If I understand properly, I'm getting this secondhand through Mr. Brayard. But it will be specific, it will specifically call out the various respects in which the zoning bylaws are not complied with. And then at the hearing before the ZBA, the question with respect to each one of those will be, well, is it reasonable for the town to insist on literal compliance with this, given the educational use? The courts have said that you can't forbid an educational use in anywhere. This is the single residence district, and we certainly do not forbid an educational use. But they've gone on to say, and you can't effectively deny an educational use by applying the same kind of restrictions to a school that you would apply to a single family home. It would be ridiculous to expect the same dimensions, for example.
Thank you, Tom.
Any other clarifying
I-
questions? Sorry, Rob, you're going to say something?
I just wanted to add that our understanding is the same as Mr. Mullins, that we will, in the application call out where we see nonconformities. There'll be a table.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or concerns regarding this topic?
Laura Bicky, Parker Road in Wakefield, Mass.
Yes, Paul.
I wanted to just go on the record saying that I'm gravely concerned about the lack of a sidewalk on the new road going into the north from Hemlock. When you go up the driveway to the Hilltop School that's about to be blasted into the hilltop, you're going to be walking up a narrow driveway with vehicular traffic and pedestrians on it, and there's going to be no sidewalk there, and people are going to get hurt regularly, and we shouldn't be in this situation.
Thank you, Paul. You're talking about Hemlock Road?
Exactly. They're going to have a sidewalk on the south driveway, but the main entrance, the front of the building, the zero sidewalk, you have two choices. You have the 100 steps or the elevated boardwalk, or if you're at the far western part of the parking lot, you can walk up the driveway and dance between the cars and buses.
Okay, thank you. My request was if we had any more comments or questions regarding this particular topic regarding what we were just discussing and not regarding the plans yet. But noted. Any, back to my original request, any other questions regarding what we just discussed? Okay. All right, let's move on to the next topic then. I don't believe our consultant is here right now. He's double booked. Let me just see if Matt is here. No, Matt is not here yet. He will try to join us after he finishes his other hearing. Do we want to take a look at the revised plans rather than going through the responses to the letter?
I think, yes, Chairman Romano, I think that makes sense. Unless David, if you have any other thoughts, if you'd prefer to start going through the letter, but we do have everyone here to go through the revised plans, if that's appropriate.
Yeah, I think that would get everyone caught up on the work we've done since the last public hearing.
Thank you.
So Mr. Chair, Dave Conway from Niche Engineering, if I could share my screen.
Please do.
Okay. So last time we met, there was a request to have the intersection at Farm Street showing a roundabout and try to quantify the impacts as they relate to the Wetlands Protection Act of what that roundabout intersection would look like versus the T intersection, which we had been showing. So with some guidance from the engineering department, we've developed this exhibit.
which is the driveway transitioning to a roundabout on Farm Street. In doing this, we're looking to like quantify the impacts to the wetlands, to the buffer zones. So we made some assumptions. My understanding is this work would be designed, permitted, and built by the town. The Farm Street improvements, maybe some involvement from the school, but that the geometry, what we're showing here is a fairly conservative assumption on what the impacts would be, just to kind of walk folks through it. We have our 5-foot sidewalk on the north side of the driveway, then meeting a 10-foot wide sidewalk, which then proceeds down Farm Street. Again, we're trying to be fairly conservative with the impacts. So this 10-foot wide sidewalk also has a 5-foot shoulder against the curb, a 3-foot shoulder on the far side. And then we showed 2-to-1 grading instead of like walls or something steeper to get back down. And we're quantifying these impacts to include them into our stormwater calcs. And also we've used these to kind of further develop the, if you've seen in like the previous iterations, the Excel spreadsheets we put together for the amount of different disturbances between the two different zones of the buffer zones, 0 from 25 and 25 to 100. Now, this exhibit, we just did as an overlay, just so people can kind of see the difference between the two, because I know folks have looked at the T intersection a lot, so we just thought it might be useful to have this, so they can see the impacts of one versus the other. The purple here is the roundabout. The black would be at the T intersection. The purple dashed line would be the TOA slope for the roundabout design. The black is the TOA slope that's on the plans for the T intersection. And we can just see how in some points, the pavement, because the lanes as they approach Farm Street become a little bit narrower. We have one exit lane instead of two. Some of our impacts come in a little bit. And then as we start obviously putting a circle on and start to swing out, the impacts start to move out and down the Farm Street. So these are all assumptions. We feel they're very good assumptions. It's a good design. We limited the work to where we start to move out of the 25. Now, what this does mean in some sense, we've been showing, if people are familiar, we're going to be doing some invasive species removal and restoration areas. Some of this work ends up, if we were to do a roundabout in those areas, so that area becomes a little bit smaller. And I don't know if we want to like bite off big chunks and move from roundabout to like net subjects, or maybe pause here for a second, take questions, or
Yeah, let's pause there for a second, please. So yes, there was some invasive species removal that was going to be proposed in that area. So there'll be less removal required with the roundabout now?
Basically, because if I zoom in,
Okay,
the roundabout slope, and see this little piece right here?
yes,
So the invasive species would still be removed. It's just the restoration area gets smaller because there's less to restore.
okay. Okay, any questions regarding this area? All right, let's move on, please.
So just following up, these graphics have been included previously. They've just been revised to reflect the roundabout. This is kind of the disturbance areas within in the existing conditions. This just quantifies what's going on there now. And this graphic quantifies the change in surface types within the buffer zones. Now the difference in these are all quantified on the buffer zone table takeoffs, which we provided those back in January. brought in previously, and then this is the updated version showing the impacts of the roundabout. I don't know if we want to wait for Dan or if you want, would you like to proceed with the comment review?
I don't believe Matt is here, but
Oh, sorry.
we do want to move on to the review. I know that he has not had a chance to review it himself. But we can go through it with the commission now.
All right, so just for everyone's edification, we submitted a comment letter back on the 12th for that set of plans. And then just before we were submitted that comment review letter, we received the compiled comments from Rebecca. So a lot of the comments, especially from the peer reviewers, which we had previously, we've had those for a while, were formally addressed in the January letter. And if necessary, they were repeated here for similar comments but the Matt's comments were generally addressed back in the January letter. So walking through this, and just for a general update on everyone. So since we last left you, we've developed the exhibit. The engineering department they provided us some stormwater comments on the 19th or 20th or something like that of January, and we're addressing those currently. And the engineering department's been very forthcoming. They've been very available as we kind of work through their comments to make sure we understand them correctly and quantify and provide the right backup. So as we stand now, the engineering department stormwater comments haven't been addressed, but they're in the process of being addressed. And so just the first part of this letter, we listed the comments to track them, but that's basically like our statement as far as that goes. Now, I don't know if you want me to kind of go through these bits and pieces, or if people have specific comments on replies. It's about 15 pages with backup information providing on the Animal Crossing, details on the Animal Crossing. We've provided some additional information on that. We've provided a monitoring plan for the wildlife in the area from LEC, so they're available if you have questions on the monitoring plan. We've updated the page 3 of the NOI as requested. That was resubmitted. Previously, we had, when we had first submitted back in September, we were showing impacts to wetlands and bank, and now, through the revisions and everyone's good work, those impacts are now 0. So, again, I'll take the lead from you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the commission has had a chance to review this to some degree. Just one quick question. I do know that we requested information on the lighting, and I didn't see any detail on the lighting or wavelength information. I may have missed it.
So again, there's a reply in the January letter for that and for this February letter. I don't know if I can pull up quick, but we also have Warner Larson here as well. But as far as our best practices are for dark sky and for wildlife, we're showing 100-watt light fixtures. The lighting design complies with International Dark Sky Association recommendations for safe lighting for wildlife. At the wetlands, the light levels are 0-foot candles, so we're not leading any light into the wetlands themselves. The color temperature is 3,000 Kelvin. I know there's been wavelength data floating around, but I can have Warner Larson to speak to that. But as far as our understanding is, this tone is the best for the wildlife. And then there's a slightly different question, but there was a question, the lights, and it's further down in this, is the lights will also be dimmable, and the school will have to work out the the time that the lights are on. I think that in general, I think we've heard that they'll want some level of light there, at all times, because it is a driveway for a school. But the lights will be programmable and they'll be dimmable.
Yeah, I think the request was, did you have a spec sheet on the actual light fixture that was going to be used? And did you have specific wavelength information with that?
So the lights are being specified because it's a publicly bid project.
Okay,
We can't just go say buy a Buick. We have to write them around a certain specification, and we have to basically keep rejecting submittals until we get that specification met. So I guess if someone from here is from Warner Larson, typically what's happened is this was probably written around a particular fixture, but any fixture that meets these requirements would meet the submittal requirements for when the school's being built.
okay.
Hi, Dave. This is Josh Milanick from Warner Larson.
Hi,
Hey, Josh.
Yeah, Dave's he's led you correctly. I don't have anything to follow up. Yeah. So unfortunately, we can't provide a specific fixture. It's a performance specification that we need to write our specs around.
Okay. I know one of the questions or requests was that the wavelength be, I think it was around 600 nanometers or so, or something to that degree. I forget specifically what it was. But that would be considered wildlife friendly lighting. And that is
Yes,
something
so
that we want to ensure.
So we've deferred to the International Dark Sky Association and reviewed their recommendations for safe wildlife. And according to that association, they recommend a 3000 Kelvin light as far as appropriate lighting for wetland areas. They do not provide specific wavelengths on lights. It's a Kelvin reading.
Okay. All right. Does the commission have any additional questions regarding the lighting or any of the other specific questions? I know before we jump off to that, there was a question about somebody from the public had a question about adding more fixtures at a lower height versus what was proposed, and I believe you responded to that.
Sure. With the lighting as designed, we're not bleeding into the wetlands. And so if we were to go, and Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, if we were to go lower but more frequent, we probably still would not be blowing into the wetlands, probably with shielding, but we would start to create hot spots as the light overlaps more. Does that sound about right, Josh?
Yes, that is correct. You got to think if you bring up your flashlight, so to speak, closer to the ground, that light is going to be more intense in that specific area right under the light. So you get these bright to dim to bright to dim areas. We're not going to see a drastic improvement or really improvement at all of reduction of light spilling into the wetlands. We're already at 0-foot candles on all the jurisdictional wetlands. So the height that we have is the most efficient layout with a even lighting along the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you. I think there's also a concern from potentially June Circle residents, whether or not they would be seeing those lights at night or not.
So the lights are shielded and the shields are on the back of the actual diodes themselves.
Okay.
And we are showing 0.0-foot candles within the jurisdictional wetlands, which are in between the lights and the June Circle residents.
Okay, thank you. Does the commission have any?
I have a question, Bob.
Go ahead, Teresa.
So, and one of the requests was a copy of the blasting plan, and the response was, you'll get it after it's been approved by the town, the town of Wakefield Fire Department, I guess. If it's been approved by the town, by the fire department, I think that might be too late to see if we have any concerns about it having to do with the protections that we're supposed to enforce under the Wetlands Protection Act. So I would just say that I guess I think I would be in favor of seeing it before it's formally approved.
David, do you have a response?
So the blasting plan would need to be completed by the person who's actually pulling the blasting permit, which is a contractor which hasn't been named yet. So that document won't exist because it's will be there particular to how they plan on doing the work. Now, any reasonable condition that we can think of that we want to include to make sure that the interests of the Wetlands Protection Act are protected. I mean, I think we could consider, but as we stated, the blasting is there's going to be blasting throughout the site. There's not going to be done in any of the wetlands. It will be not any closer than any of the limited works we're showing. We did have someone back in November who came in to speak that the effects of the blasting is very limited to where the holes are put. It doesn't go much farther beyond them. So I'd ask if yet for specific concerns instead of if there's some specific concerns that we could address, if we could hear them, but I'm not sure how we can,
Okay.
Can I,
Go ahead, Jim.
Dave, there was a question here about the blasting and your answer didn't really answer their question. Their question was concerning what pollutants are given off by the blast. And they specifically gave 3 different items. So I didn't see really any answer to that other than to say that it's going to be in the building permit, in the blasting permit, but is that information that the blasting permit would have?
Now, PMA might be able to speak to this more clearly than I, because I've actually never prepared a blasting permit. But as far as I understand it, it includes the materials they're going to use, the methodology, and where they're going to do the monitoring,
Right.
and things like that. So I think that typically would be included in the permit. I mean, obviously, probably.
But it doesn't really talk about, when they blast the explosion itself, what pollutants come back down to be carried away through the water and stuff like that. I mean, where you're doing so much blasting, it might be an issue to think about.
And it's one I would imagine has been addressed before in the way that the Commonwealth approves and regulates blasting itself.
Mr. Chairman, I can hop in if you like.
Sure, please do, Kevin.
This is Kevin from PMA. And our construction manager is Gilbane Construction Corporation. And Gilbane has solicited some information from a blasting company. But as David Conway had previously pointed out, we have to go through the public bidding process. Right now, we have a package out to the site contractors or the pre-qualified site contractors that includes the blasting. The blasting permit will be obtained from the Wakefield Fire Department. They utilize the state fire marshal's guidelines on all things blasting. A detailed plan will be submitted by a yet to be named blaster. We just have not completed that portion of our bidding yet. But from my knowledge and past practice and past projects with blasting, the package from the blaster is comprehensive. It goes over what chemicals are used in compliance with the fire marshal and Wakefield Fire Department's regulations. And it goes into as much detail as the size of the blast. So when we do identify through a public bidding process, the site contractor and the person they're using for blasting, we'll make sure that they're licensed, we'll vet them, make sure that they are responsible and responsive bidders, and we will fill out the appropriate permit with the Wakefield Fire Department. I will add too, as a follow-up to the promise we made that the administration did, is we intend to go out and survey, if the residents allow us to, the exterior and even interior of affected homes within the blast radius. We're just finishing up the procurement of a third-party company that will do surveys of properties. Again, they'll contact on their own, this company will contact residents, we'll work through the fire department and make sure the radius is correct. And if the residents will allow them, we'll do a pre-existing condition survey to help protect them during the blasting as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I do see a question from the public with a hand raised, and I do recall that it was, Paul had asked about lighting before, so Paul, go ahead and ask your question.
I just wanted to interject that, as I said before, the Kelvin is the temperature that you see, what's perceived by a human, not what the wildlife sees. So what I'm talking about is if you spend less than 90 seconds Googling wildlife friendly, it says it's got to be 560 nanometers at least. The wavelength matters, Kelvin doesn't. The statement earlier about 3000 K is the lighting. That's interesting, but that doesn't help the wildlife. If we're going to have wildlife friendly lighting, let's just make sure it's 560 nanometer. You can easily get that wavelength with the right certification for wildlife friendly and still come out in that Kelvin range. But if you go at it the wrong way and just buy a 3000 K light, it can impact wildlife adversely, and it shouldn't be that complicated. Please just confirm that the wildlife friendly lighting with 560 nanometers can be put in. Shouldn't be more money, shouldn't be more headache, and it shouldn't be more effort. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. Bob Brooks, you have your hand raised.
Yes, Bob Brooks, 7 June Circle. Through the chair, I have a question for Mr. Dave Conroy. And that is, I've been in contact, actually, if you could bring up that original map of the Rotary, would be fine. Is that possible?
Yeah.
And while he's looking for that, I'll propose my question. I've been in contact with 2 of the other abutters to this program. I won't mention their names, but I'll give you their addresses. One lives at 161 Farm Street, which is directly across the street. And they are officially one of the abutters. And when I showed them the drawing of where the roundabout was, they tried to guess where their house was and how it's going to affect them. Is it possible to put a drawing with their location on there? And also there was another abutter that was on Harmon Road, and they're actually in Saugus. They're the 100-foot abutters list. And their property is 100 feet from that on Harmon Road. And they wanted to find out exactly so they could look at the actual drawing and see how it's going to affect the rotary roundabout is going to affect them also, because they have issues getting in and out of the traffic and want to find out exactly where their the position of their street is. Is that something that they could do?
Well, that would certainly be off the property, substantially off the property of the school. And I guess that'd be a question maybe for town engineer.
Well, it's still part of the project. And they are abutters, official abutters of this project. I have 2 copies of the abutters list, and both of them are listed. The only reason I'm mentioned because I had a conversation with this weekend, and I don't believe they're on the thing, and they asked me if I could find out if they could get a drawing with their locations on there.
Okay, Bill, would you like to answer that question, please?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to take the lead to, have the abutters come into me and look at that. I mean, this is something that the town's asking for, so we'll also be discussing it at the Traffic Advisory Committee on Friday as well. So there's an opportunity for them to be at that meeting as well.
Yeah,
if they have questions, then they're more than welcome to come to me. I think that'd be appropriate.
Okay, so that's fine. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, there is another hand raised. Allison, I see your hand raised.
Actually, it's Doug Heath. I live with Allison at 28 Stedman Street here in Wakefield. With regard to the roundabout, will stormwater flow from the proposed roundabout into the adjacent wetlands? And if so, where?
Kevin, is that a question that you can answer, or would that be Dave, or would that be, I'm not sure, Paige?
All right, so I can start.
Okay.
So the roundabout, which you should see, be able to see on your screen again. Right now, we're showing in the middle a depression. First off, the roundabout itself, because of the narrowing of the lanes as it approaches, you're not generally seeing a large increase in impervious area. Might not even be any as it relates to the existing roadway. We provided storage in the middle to address rate and some water quality issues. The impervious area associated with the 10-foot wide path, we're including that impervious area into our drainage calcs just to be conservative. So now we're going to be over mitigating for some impervious that might not be built for a while, and actually might not be built in this configuration. Again, this is a fairly 10-foot wide generous path. And then how the actual water from the rest of the road gets managed, I would leave to the town. This is just the thinking that went into the exhibit that we have in front of us tonight.
Yeah, my question is regarding the catchment area of the proposed construction between the Rotary and the new access road, as well as Farm Street. And how will water, once it falls as rain, flow from that area? Will it be channeled through culverts, stormwater outfalls, or will it just be absorbed into the surrounding soil?
No, so
Are there catch basins proposed? I don't know. I can't see any.
So for the driveway itself, the stormwater management is similar to the versions that we've seen before. We have catch basins within our road that will capture the runoff from the roadway surface itself. We have water quality inlets, which will address water quality issues from that runoff. We have a subsurface detention systems so that the increase in rate would be mitigated from the increase in impervious areas. And then that's directed back out to where the water generally would go anyway, which is on this case, it would be the north side of the driveway, through level spreaders, as opposed to, I think when we had first started back in September, and this was a suggestion from your BSC consultant, we had flared end sections, but basically just pipes pointed at the wetlands, and we've modified the design to incorporate level spreaders everywhere for the discharge points, so that the flows are spread out, not erosive, more mimic what's going on there today. The specifics for the roadway itself, again, the out in Farm Street, they'll have to meet their requirements for stormwater management. They'll generally probably, and again, I don't want to guess it to what that would be. We've provided some ability to have storage in the middle. And then again, we're taking into account kind of the impervious and change in surface type along our property side of the curb.
Well, Dave, as you know, chloride from road salt applications will not be mitigated by stormwater treatment systems. It is handled, total dissolved solids. So how will that be mitigated, given the sidewalks and the extra impermeable surfaces that are added to this construction?
So we've provided a operations and maintenance plan, and we've modified that, and the revised one was in the materials submitted back in January. And this, schools committed. So what the Mass DOT does in sensitive areas is they limit salt use by using a material called premix, which is a combination of salt and calcium chloride. And so the school's committing to using that as a de-icer and following Mass DOT guidelines for de-icing in sensitive areas.
Right, but chloride is chloride, as you well know.
Yeah, whether it's
So
potassium
premix
chloride.
doesn't make any difference in this case.
Chairman Romano, if I may, point of order, this plan is a draft plan that was prepared to show a layout. It really wasn't designed to get into detail about on this level at this time.
Yeah, agreed. And we don't have the town's stormwater management showing on here either. To Doug Heath's comment, whether it's potassium chloride or sodium chloride salt, you know, the chloride is still an issue that we would want to somehow deal with. But I do have a question for David. Whereabouts on this layout, where would your storm treatment water end? And where would the town start?
Ours would probably end around the throat,
Okay,
around here,
okay,
would be my guess. But again, that's, you know, it might be 5 feet back, it might be 10 feet forward.
right.
But in general, we'd look to probably have a set of catch basins, you know, towards the throat that we can capture the runoff and then direct it back into our system for. You know, we're accounting for this pavement flowing into our system, so up to the property line, kind of through this slice of the rotary.
So that's a finished grade, the 135, 134 finished grades, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So then the town would be responsible for picking up the stormwater treatment after that. Where you
Yes.
pointed out, yeah.
Yep, we will.
Okay,
And we'll be filing a separate NOI for that.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Bill, do you know, are there storm basins, catch basins now anywhere there on farm?
Yeah, well, a little bit further down there is, and that discharges into the culvert system that eventually goes underneath Langergan Field.
Okay,
But there's also one basin that's sort of on the subject property, but it's all filled with debris. So where that goes, we're not really sure.
okay,
So Dave, you can probably swing in and show that, but it's right by where the gate is and that. in the
There
path.
it is.
So there is one basin, yeah.
okay.
So there's one basin that is there, but we're not really confident where that goes. And, you know, at this point, I don't think it's really material to their design.
Right,
Yeah, it's filled to the top of debris right now. Maybe circling back to the de-icing discussion is, you know, we're open to suggestions. I mean, this isn't the first road to go by a wetland in Wakefield. So what has been successfully proposed and implemented in other parts? Now, there will be a need. I mean, it's New England and we have winter, so we will need to de-ice on some level.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, if you know from history, you know, for instance, like Powart, there's quite a bit of buildup of de-icing agents from the roads over the years, whether it's potassium chloride, sodium chloride, or whatever. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if we have somebody that can offer that suggestion.
Bob, Doug Heath again, might suggest that at a minimum, the contractors or proponents at least sample the water to determine the existing baseline chloride levels. So at least we'll have a reference point. If there are impacts that exceed Clean Water Act guidelines, at least we'll know where we're starting from.
That's a good
Mr.
suggestion.
Chairman, this is Kevin.
Yes, Kevin.
We'd be very happy to work this out with the DPW, as you guys, I agree, in the town, or I would say close to experts having Powart right there. We'd be very happy to work this out with Mr. Renault and his staff on what would be the proper chemicals and also signage for the driveway. Not a problem.
Great, yeah, we would definitely want signage to indicate whatever.
Yeah,
whether
yeah,
it's
standard.
low.
We're willing to do that. Very good.
Thank you. Okay, does the commission have any other questions on this? Jim?
I didn't have a question on that particularly, but I did have a question on the subsurface drainage system in the roadway. I don't know if you have other things you want to talk about first.
No, sure. Let's talk.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just for clarification, are you talking about subsurface drainage issues underneath the rotary that is still being designed?
No, I'm not talking about the rotary. I'm talking about the street, the road itself.
The driveway.
The actual school driveway?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
So Dave, I was looking at drawing what's it, 603, C603, that shows your drainage system. And I had a question. You have that, the underneath of that system is lined with the PVC, is that correct?
It's like an HDPE liner, like a plastic liner.
So does that go up the sides as well as do across the bottom? It totally
Yes.
encapsulates that?
Yep. Yes.
And then your water goes from there, goes into your water quality structures, right?
No, it should be the other way around. So if we
No.
were to go catch basins to drain manholes to water quality structure,
And you've got
then to subsurface drainage.
right, you got the outlet control structure in there somewhere too. But
And that- Yep.
and the water quality structure is the Storm Tech 740 or something like that. Is that I know it takes out sediment, it takes out floatables, but it doesn't do anything for our soluble pollutants, correct?
What the subsurface detention systems as well are also fitted with an isolator row. So, I'm sorry, I don't, maybe if Paige has that drawing, she can pull up. I don't have that set open, but the isolator row, so the systems themselves are these plastic chambers in a bed of crushed stone, and it's in all of an impervious encasement. Now, the first row of these chambers is wrapped in filter fabric. Again, so that provides more sediment removal and a finer sediment removal and anything that might bond to sediments. But if the question is, soluble salt in the runoff, that's unless it bonds to a piece of the suspended solids, it's not going to filter out the salts.
Oh, okay, but can I interrupt for a second? The drawing
Sure.
that you have is not the drawing I was thinking about.
You want the driveway.
I want
this is
I want the
right, Jim?
driveway.
Yeah.
There you go.
So is that the same thing? It has the isolated row in it?
Yeah, that's the shaded one.
That's the shaded one.
Yeah. Yes. So you see the inlets come on into that row.
Right.
And then it
So
moves
that's,
through.
so, and you're saying that the other chamber will be wrapped in the geotech fabric or whatever it is, right?
The isolated row will.
No, the isolated row gets done in the PVC, right?
Nope, the isolated. So
I'm looking at
So-
drawing. The one that shows the
Mr.
cross section is C603.
So that sounds like it might be one of the detail sheets, Paige.
Yes.
Yep.
I think we have a section of one of the.
Right, yeah, okay, so.
All right,
Yeah,
so here
that
it is.
that one there. So,
All right.
is it, so I see the 40 mil PVC.
Right.
And then you also see the geotextile, it's pointing in the same areas.
Oh,
I was wondering how that works together.
this call out should be removed. Sorry, this is Paige Blanchard with Niche Engineering. This geotextile is being replaced with the impermeable membrane because we are not infiltrating or detaining because of the soils. So really this call out should be deleted.
Okay, so it should be all just, it's, you're making an enclosed unit, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So when you do that, you don't get any recharge into the system, any water recharge into the ground underneath. Correct?
Correct. And as we've talked about on this site before, because of the ledge, we have,
No,
really.
I understand. I'm just trying to realize what's happening with the system, the way you have to put it in. So when you do that, aren't you really gonna send possibly water polluted with, with chemicals or salt or chlorides back directly into your discharges to the wetland? Because the closed system now, you can't recharge to the ground, so you're putting all the water through a pipe system and it's the only time it daylights is when it gets to the wetland.
But as a reminder, it's pre-treated, so we'll be removing.
But
Yeah,
it's
to a-
pre-treated, his pre-treatment does not take out soluble pollutants. It would take out the floatables and it would take out the oil and grease and it would probably take out the sediment.
And also a lot of the solubles will also tend to bond with the sediments as well. So
Well, it doesn't get that much sediment according to this maintenance schedule.
we're also not expecting it to be seeing a lot of, again, outside of whatever we decide for de-icing.
Well, this is disturbing to me because it seems to me that we're putting a non-treated discharge into the BVW.
Mr. Chair, if I may, point of order, but we are getting into a level of detail now, and I'm very concerned the fact that the town's peer review consultant isn't here yet, and that we may end up having to have this discussion all over again. Do we
Well,
have
we do
any
have-
idea when they might be here?
I don't know. He had a 7:30 meeting in another town through Zoom. He said he'd join as soon as he could, but there's no idea how long that would take. But we do have our town engineer here.
You do.
And he is obviously, expert also on this topic and can also assist with this discussion. And
Yeah, I
it
mean,
is definitely pertinent.
this is a stormwater discussion. And I mean, that's something that we're reviewing as part of this. And we've asked the applicant to look at this specific area and some of these areas in the lower section, because the soils, based on my observations with test holes, have infiltrative capacity. So I think that this may be a moot point, depending on what the revised design is. So I see Jim's, where he's coming from, but with an infiltrative system like this, you would see treatment at least for phosphorus and nitrogen that provides some reduction. And then for the soluble, salt scenario, I mean, that is a thing that happens all over the Commonwealth, unfortunately. So, that's not, for them to come up with a design to address that is pretty difficult to do. I mean, if you look right downstream of this, all of our stormwater is going right into essentially the discharge pipe for this wetland. So, I would say, they should maximize the amount of infiltration in this area where the soils allow it. And that's something we've been discussing and that they should be focusing on. So, again, they haven't addressed my comments yet, and I expect that would be addressed in the next round that comes to me.
Who is that's speaking?
That's Bill Renault.
That's Bill.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Jim.
How you doing, Bill?
Good to see you. Yeah, no problem.
Bill, the other systems that you're talking about don't have fully enclosed, there's always open in the bottom so that you get recharged through the groundwater.
Exactly. And that's what I've asked them to do in sections, specifically in this area where there is more gravel and sands above the ledge. So
Yeah.
they have an ability to do that in sections, and I'd like to maximize that. And this would be the area where they could maximize it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, Jim, any more questions regarding that stormwater?
No, he just put me in my place there.
Okay. What other questions does the commission have? Are there any questions from the commission regarding the responses that were submitted? I should say any additional questions or clarification. What is the expected completion date of the stormwater review? Bill, do you know?
At this point, I haven't received the revised plans and drainage report. So, I mean, maybe Niche might have an idea of the time frame to get it to me. We're looking to expedite it as soon as we get it.
So we'll start with that. So Bill and his office has been very helpful in kind of meeting with us regularly as we come across, trying to address the comments. So first, thanks for that. We're hoping to get the calcs done in relative short order and then have those changes reflected in the plans for submission for next Thursday. And well, that's it.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah, and our plan is to expedite our review. So as soon as we get that, we're expecting a few days to review it. My staff will be ready to do that and make that happen. So
Thank you.
sure.
I don't see our peer reviewer, but I do see our stormwater peer reviewer, Dom Rinaldi from BSC. I just was alerted that he has joined us. Dom, do you have any questions or anything to add?
No, Mr. Chairman, Dominic Rinaldi, PSC, and Bill, by the way, thank you for stepping in. I was about to raise my hand when you commented. But no, Mr. Chairman, as Bill said, we're just waiting on the updated plans and specs, and we're working with Bill and his team to get that review done quickly and get this turned around.
Okay, thank you. All right, any additional questions at this point from the commission? Are there any questions from the public?
Yes, Chairman. This is Doug Heath again, 28 Stedman Street.
Yes, Doug.
January 23rd, I submitted comments regarding the stormwater impacts of the wetlands in Vernal Pool, specifically dealing with chloride. Has the commission had a chance to review these, or will the proponents provide comments in response to my questions and suggestions?
Rebecca, has that letter been forwarded to?
I forwarded to Rebecca Davis.
Okay. Rebecca,
23rd.
has that been forwarded to David or anybody?
Most likely, but I would have to double check my email.
Okay. We'll check on that, Doug, to see if that.
Okay,
letter
thank
was-
you. I'm a expert on road salt contamination. I led several large studies with EPA on highway systems impacts, both groundwater, surface water, and drinking water supplies. So I hope that my comments can be taken to heart once they're circulated around your commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I did read that letter, a while ago. I don't recall all the contents, but I do have it. Was there a suggestion in there as to potential de-icers that would be suitable?
Just to use minimal amounts and try to spread them out as much as possible. But the key recommendation is that don't have that road built there next to the wetlands in Vernal Pool.
Mm.
That would eliminate the problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from the public? All right, so we are, I do see a hand that just came up, Linda Ireland.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question about the variations in the volumes of runoff in stormwater, particularly in the Series 3 wetland, which is the wetland that you've spent a lot of time looking at. Sorry, I'm Nowell Road in Melrose. The Series 3 wetland is a wetland with a large culvert. There's a lot of activity there in terms of amphibians bordering vegetated wetland. And the stormwater runoff volume change is between a factor of 5 and 6. So how is this going to affect this fairly important area? And how will that also factor into the fact that you've got the new access road there, creating road salt, chloride, pollution issues that are going to be amplified by a factor of 5?
So I think both Bill and David did mention that we haven't got the stormwater report yet, and that will be reviewed by our peer reviewer and by the town engineer. So your comments are noted, and we would expect to see those addressed or answered.
I was just going to point out that in addition, there are other wetlands which the volume is reduced by a factor of 4, such as DP10. And the same question goes, how are these wetlands going to be recharged when the stormwater report is doing such drastic alterations to at least 4 wetlands?
we don't have this current stormwater report with the latest layout. So I don't know that that can be answered.
We're asking them to quantify it, Mr. Chair. So that's in my comments that have gone to the design team. So
Okay,
we're
thank
looking
you.
at them to quantify for each of the vernal pools and to look at the ponding heights in each of them, all of that for each of the storms. So we're looking for comparisons in all storms for those resource areas specifically.
So you'll be looking at the water budgets for each of the locations.
Yeah, that was a comment from us.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions from the public? All right, so so Matt was not able to join us. He must still be, oh, I do see one more question. This will be the last question that we take. Eleanor, go ahead, please. But you're muted. Eleanor, you were muted when you started talking. Still cannot hear you. No.
No? I have my
Now,
mute-
yes.
Okay. 19 Sheffield Road, Wakefield. I wanted to ask about the blasting plan. We got very little information about that before. And when Gilbane presented that on December 6th, it sounded like they had their blaster picked out already, and he was discussing that their approach would be to overblast, which was a little concerning because when you read the SCARP Tech report, it says one should avoid overblasting. So I do think it's important for us to get a better handle on, what the blasting approach will be, what chemicals will be used, how long it will be, and then also the rock crushing operations that are going to be set up next to the school and transported down. That is, rock that becomes dusty and it can present sort of a health hazard to people. So I would love to just know a little bit more information about that.
Hi, this is Neil Benner with Gilbane. I'd like to respond to that if that's all right.
Okay, yes, Neil, please go ahead.
So as far as the blasting plan goes, that as Kevin said earlier, that does get developed by the blasting contractor who ultimately is awarded the project. We have done quite a bit of research and we have a lot of knowledge from other projects and past projects about what a general approach will be for this project. But as Kevin said, we won't know the particulars and those plans, as you can imagine, are quite detailed and reflect exactly how the approach is going to be for blasting this particular project. As far as the rock crushing operation, we will be very diligent about keeping the rock crushing operation, keeping water sprayed on it. There are actually spray jets built into the crusher that control the dust. So dust control is going to be a big part of what we do on this project, and it will be part of our planning that we submit.
Thank you, Neil, for clarifying.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Kevin again.
Yes,
Just
Kevin.
maybe the woman who asked the question didn't hear my original response. At an expense to the project, we did bring on a consultant for blasting to work with Gilbane, knowing that it's a legitimate question that would come up during this Concom. But again, we're going to publicly bid the site work, of which the blaster will be a member of that team, and will submit as required by the State Fire Marshal's office all the details that go along with the blasting material and their means and methods as well for approval by Wakefield Fire Department. And if ultimately they'd like to send it to the State Fire Marshal's office, we'll work along with them on that as well.
Thank you, Kevin. Bob, I did say I would not take any more questions, but I will.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. It's going to be a quick one. Just a question for Neil, because they mentioned you've done a lot of blasting before. Since being a butter to this project, and one of the rock crushing stations is going to be approximately 350, 325, 350 feet from the back of my house. Can you tell me what the decibel levels are of the stone crushing? I know it's going to be a tremendous amount of noise. As
I'll answer that, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
go ahead.
As part of our requirements for the bidding of the site contract and the blaster, we will have seismographs placed strategically as needed where the blasting and crushing operation is going to happen. As for decibels on blasting and items like that, neither Neil or I are an expert on that, and we would like to defer that to the permitting process with the Wakefield Fire Department, please.
Okay, I didn't know if there was a requirement level that they can't go over, or is it just?
There absolutely is, and it's all part of the plan. It gets down, Bob, as to precise, as I said, to the size of the shot, the number of holes, the distance apart from the holes, very prescribed. And again, they're going to be working hand in hand with the Wakefield Fire Department and
Okay.
in the
All right,
regs
that's
as issued by the State Fire Marshal.
All right,
Bob, if
thanks.
you joined late too, I'll reiterate again if there's any new people on.
No, that's okay.
We're in the process of hiring a third party, and we're going to offer the exterior and interior surveys to people affected in the blast radius. So hopefully our third party will be reaching out to those neighbors shortly.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Kevin.
We could use your
Thanks,
help
Mr.
too, Bob, if you don't mind making sure that we get everyone who's interested within that radius.
Sure,
Maybe
I got a
can call
list.
you
I got a list of about 165.
Uh-oh. No, Bob, you've been a spokesman for the neighborhood, and I'm sure that we can talk to the fire captain.
That's fine. Yeah, we can work on that another time. But thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the time.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we are gonna move on. We do have other business to take care of. So we will be anticipating the stormwater review, submission and review. And Rebecca, is there anything else right now that we're looking for?
Not that I can think off the top of my head, but I reserve the right to think of something later, maybe.
Yes. Okay.
Just if we can get that letter forwarded to us. I'm not sure we have it.
The regarding the salt,
Yes.
I already did that to you and Kevin.
Oh, thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, it's part of the comprehensive list of questions that Rebecca put together.
All right, well, I thank everybody for your contribution tonight.
No.
And we will be moving.
Raise
on.
hand. It says lower hand. Oh, okay. You put me speaker? Hello?
Hello, we did close it to questions.
Well, I didn't see my issue addressed, the one about the trees.
What is your?
I think that's coming up.
Identify yourself for the record, please.
My name is Ed Paris on 20 Chapman Road, and I spoke this morning to the Conservation Committee, and they were going to address the property lines that they came over and did on my property without notifying me, and trying to find out what's going on with that.
Hey, Bob, that's
Yes.
the next, that's Heron Pond. That's the next project. Okay.
Okay. We'll deal with that in a few minutes. That is the next topic on our agenda. So this particular topic, we're closing for the night, and then we'll be moving on to that after. So hang on there with us and we'll be right with you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chairman. Thank
everybody.
you, Commission.
Thank you, everybody, tonight.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bill.
All right, I will announce that we had 10 Broadway originally on the agenda. Do not have a file number yet. That has been postponed per the request of the applicant to February 21st. Again, that's 10 Broadway. That's the site of the current MG Fitness building. All right, other business. Rebecca, is tree removal Heron Pond that the next topic?
Yes, that's the next topic.
Okay. Would you like to lead us off, or is there an applicant here?
I was thinking there might be an applicant show up, but I can tell you that there was a request to remove some pine trees. Elaine did go out to the site. She provided some pictures. I think there was a letter that was also written by a landscaper that was forwarded to you guys.
Yes,
From what I understand, and I apologize. I thought there was going to be the Heron Pond manager on the on this meeting. But from what I understand, there was during one of the windstorms, there was a branch from one of the pine trees that snapped and fell on one of the buildings or a portion of the structure. They have since requested to remove some of the other pine trees in the area, likely based on the fact that they're nervous that those could potentially cause some damage as well. Like I said, Elaine forwarded some photos. I understand, and let me just say this real quick, that I had a number of, and this related to this topic, but I had a number of phone calls today regarding the fact that there's been a surveyor out there doing surveying some lot lines. I had suggested to those folks that perhaps I had assumed the Heron Pond representative would be attending the meeting. That was that's what I understood. So I had suggested to some of the folks that had questions regarding their surveying of the lot line, that since the Heron Pond manager was going to be at this meeting tonight, that they could potentially attend the meeting and ask them themselves what that staking was in regard to, because I don't know. So I think that's why we have a number of folks here today to ask that question. It seems unfortunate that there's no one on here, so I'm not really sure what to do with that.
yeah, we cannot speculate why they're surveying. So, yeah, who is it that has your hand raised? Is it showing up as Mark Hurley, but I don't believe that's who we identified as.
Yeah, it's Mark Hurley and Ed Paris. We're
Okay.
watching together.
And you're at Heron Pond.
Yeah, honestly, I've been here 40 years. I've seen a big change.
You're cutting out. It's difficult to hear you.
I've been here 40 years, and I've seen a big change in the pond. I think it started, with the development over there. There's overgrowth and vegetation, and then a lot of the water is just gone. I don't know if it's draining somewhere where it's draining, but it's it's dry in spring. There's hardly any water in it.
Mark, what's your address?
24 Chapman Road.
Okay, so you're right behind the pond.
I am.
Yes.
And we had a pine tree that was on their property. I ended up paying for that. I've taken care of this land for a long time. My family has, and nobody's ever somebody just came into our yard. The only way they could have gone down there to stake it is to walk through our property, and we didn't receive any notifications on that, and we don't know why they're doing it.
That's weird.
Yeah. So they have staked the property line between your property and Heron Pond? Or they've marked it in some way?
Yeah, the only way they could have gotten there is to walk down our property to stake them in. And I was surprised because it happened on Sunday. I'm sorry, on Monday.
Can you walk in the pond? Or is there water there now?
Yeah,
Frozen?
Yeah, it's very low though compared. So when it's not a weather related thing. There's something else going on. And if you look at the vegetation, it's well overgrown because the fertilizer and the irrigation that they had over there, it all seeped into the water. It's now, it's eating up the water because it looks like the Serengeti out there. It looks so different. They used to even have, a waterfall out there to keep the circulation. Also, all the wildlife died. There's the fish. the crayfish, the
Really?
frogs, doesn't, you know, when it dries up, they have no habitat.
Is it dried up now or frozen over?
We should take a look at that.
And we have had kind of a drought condition for a while, but is it frozen over right now or is it dried up, the basin? Hello? Mark, can you hear me? Cannot hear
Wakefield Sewer
you.
Department,
Oh.
Wakefield, Wakefield drainage system, is it draining down into a, another tributary or? Where is
So-
the runoff going to?
I think there is a drain there, isn't there? On one end of that pond?
Yes, but my question is, where is it draining into? Is it draining into another tributary? Or is it draining into the Wakefield sewerage system?
It wouldn't be going into a sewage system. Storm drain possibly, but isn't there an outlet at the south end of the pond?
Yeah.
So
I
Mark,
think it
again, is the pond dry or is it frozen over?
It's not frozen over. We've had a couple of days.
So there's water in it.
Yeah, there is. That's about the only time you'll see water now is about the winter. It dries up before even summer. You know, back when, back in the day, it would have to be a really dry, hot summer in order for that water to even be low. Now every year, it's just, there's hardly any water. The whole habitat has changed. And I
No
do
one's
remember
been
when I first
digging,
came here, there was not, go ahead.
no one's been digging down by that one drain location, have they? I mean, have you noticed anyone opening up
No.
the?
No, I haven't seen anybody, I mean, that's down the end of the street. I
Yeah,
believe is where you're talking about, compared to 24 Chapman Road. I think it's at the end.
When
No,
I-
I mean,
There was some
that's,
work.
it's kind of shut off, there's a gate there and everything now.
I wonder if, should take a look at that, see if it looks like
Yeah.
it's been altered.
There was some work going on. Remember, we had a project to deal with the roof runoff and the leaders coming off the roof and changing the grade back at some of the units. Sometime last year, we had that project.
Yeah, right. I wonder if they've done that.
I don't know. And if they have, was there any potential impacts as a result of that? Rebecca, you said Elaine was out there this week when she took the pictures?
Yes.
Did she mention anything about the pond level or anything vegetation wise?
She did not, but most likely she will be at the next Conservation Commission meeting, as I won't be here. So if you want to ask her, then.
Yeah, or maybe we get a message over to Elaine to say, hey, if you didn't specifically look at the pond and vegetation, could you check that out before the next meeting?
Sure.
I guess there's really not much to talk about with the tree removal without the applicant, is there? I mean, I can show the pictures. I do have the letter.
If you could show the pictures, that'd be great, because to hop on with what Mark was saying, this is Joe Colleran at 34 Chapman Road. I
Okay.
live a couple doors down from him, and yeah, there's just been, in my opinion, an absolute abuse by Heron Pond on Chapman, what used to be Chapman Pond. I've lived here for 12 years, and my wife has lived in this house for 40 years. And our neighbor, actually, who's very close with us at 30 Chapman Road, she has been here for 70 years. So, and she can definitely speak to how much of abuse with the over fertilization and everything else that's been going on with Heron Pond. It kind of really brings me down that nobody came to represent Heron Pond, and we all kind of, we all, like you guys, we had to sit on the call this long and no legal representation from Heron Pond was here to kind of give us some insight. My wife mentioned the stakes to me yesterday. I came home later and it was dark, so I checked them out this morning, and I actually walked the stakes all the way down prior to where Mark's house is, and I can tell you, over where Mark is, they have taken care of that land so beautifully all the way down to the pond, and there's just somebody just went in everybody's yard and just decided to throw some stakes down. I have a dip in my yard that goes into the pond. So like kind of from like Mark's house all the way to probably 36 Chapman Road. It's the topography is it kind of ebbs and flows pretty good, but I got a good dip in my backyard. And I read all the stakes, and one of the stakes in my yard said property line and said rebar set on it. So I don't know if they're planning on doing some sort of future retaining wall or something from our yard. To add to Mark's remarks, I have kids that play in that yard every day, and to just have a bunch of people just randomly going through everybody's yards and throwing stakes down without any notice, kind of, I'm not a fan of it. And like I said, and like Mark was saying, we did have the big drought this year. I've never seen it go down this low before. Behind my house is probably the deepest part of the pond. And when I say it was dry as a bone. And there was probably a 5-foot diameter of water behind my house. And that's the deepest part. We did get that substantial rain and runoff a couple months ago that filled everything up. But we've seen a big decrease in every year we'd see crawfish coming up. Every year, my kids, since they were little and since my wife was little, watched all the turtles come up. The turtles come up, they lay all their eggs. We protect the eggs every year from all the raccoons and other predators that try to get them. Now we're not even seeing any of the turtles. We're not seeing any of the crawfish. We're barely seeing any mammals or anything else over here, just a few rabbits really. So I don't know what's going on with the vegetation back there and any impact that Heron Pond has been having, but I feel like if they're going to be doing anything else, it will be harming our neighborhood. And I don't really know if they're just taking down some pine trees on, I understand that, they own the pond, the property line to the pond, but if they're worried about pine trees on their side of the pond, why are they marking property lines on our side of the pond?
Yeah, unfortunately, we cannot answer that question. I am sharing the screen right now to show the location. I don't know when this Google map image was done. But anyways, here's the pond and Heron Pond's to the right, Chapman Road to the left. I do have the letter.
Yes, so Bob, over by where it says Chapman Road and Aldrich Road, that's where the drain is, right?
Yeah, I think it's down in this area somewhere.
Yeah. I want, if someone played around with that.
Yeah, it's right around the mouth over there. I forget how big it is. It might be like a, I don't know, like a 16-inch drain or something like that over there.
Who owns that property? Can you get on that property? Who owns that? Heron Pond?
We've been on that property before years ago. I remember we looked at that outlet.
For those of us who don't know the area, is that draining water out of the pond then, Jimmy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it flows towards this general direction. I don't remember exactly if it's going here, I think is what happens.
Does anyone know when that was developed?
Yeah, we know exactly. We were around when this was developed.
Probably 85.
Yeah, mid 80s, late 80s. And there were issues. It wasn't completely developed until sometime in the 90s because there were multiple phases. And like this area down here was, I think, the last phase.
Yeah.
That was before us. We have certainly had some issues over the years here. So anyways, we're gonna have Elaine, one of our agents, take a look at the vegetation in the area in the pond in particular. She was looking at the trees that they're asking to have removed, but I don't know that she paid any particular attention to the other parts of the lot. But we can certainly ask her to take a look at that and let us know what she sees. There are requirements as to how they store snow, how they sand and or salt, and also requirements on how they treat the lawn. And they are required to send us reports on a yearly basis with soil samples that get analyzed, that we do review on a yearly basis. So we certainly have been looking at this property for quite a while and getting updates. But we cannot answer the question as to why surveyors may have been marking out there. I do have the letter. I don't know if the commission has read the letter. I could share that. So we're talking about 5 potential trees in question, but I think not all of them may be proposed to come down. Has everybody had a chance to read this letter?
No.
Okay. All right, since the applicant's not here, I don't know if it makes sense to have a whole lot of discussion about it. But
Did he know, did they know they were supposed to come?
yeah, they're on the agenda.
I know that Elaine had been talking to him and had met him out at the site, so I assumed that he would be here. I think that's what Elaine thought as well. Perhaps there was some miscommunication, so I'll make sure to send another reminder, and perhaps, or most likely, he'll be at the next meeting.
Yeah, just looking at this in reverse, tree 5 is not recommended to come down. And this is by a tree qualified tree risk assessment individual. Tree 4 has been damaged and is being recommended to come down. Tree 3 is being recommended. Tree 2.
Where's this guy from? He like to read.
Looks like don't leave tree 1.
Yeah, so looked at 5 trees and recommending 3 of them to come down. And I do have pictures of the trees.
We have no idea where they sit in relation to one another or the pond, do we?
It was pond, it was unit 1, didn't it say unit 1? That's the
Yep,
first.
said
unit?
behind or next to building 1.
Next to building 1, that's the first building in the, as you're going off the street.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that must be where that big clump of trees are.
I'm thinking right, which are potential canopy trees, right? Depending on which direction the sun is coming from. Let me see if there's any pictures that will identify the location a little bit better. Oh, okay. Here's one tree that snapped right off. Yeah, so here's one of the trees in question. It's completely broken off. And I believe in the letter it said when this tree broke, it damaged some other trees. Yeah, it might be this cluster right here.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got. That doesn't help. Here's a tree with some damage at the base. And it looks
So,
like
Bob,
right on the edge of the pond.
Bob, just looking at these pictures, they do look like these pictures look like they are on the Heron Pond Association side of the pond.
Okay.
But that's kind of where we're kind of at a even more of a mystery now is why are they staking out our yards if they're worried about cutting trees down on that side of the pond, you know?
Yeah, it could possibly be something totally unrelated to these trees. That would be my guess, but you know, we don't know. Let me just look at some more pictures for you.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody on Chapman Road was kind of hoping to clarify in this meeting. We thought that it would be part of this.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem to make sense that that would be the case. But again, we don't know. Here's a tree that snapped. This tree got damaged. I see all kinds of scarring. Looks like this tree got snapped off too, right here. So yeah, the commission has these pictures. And we are speculating that it may be in this cluster here. All right, so there really isn't a whole lot we can do or say much that we haven't already said.
Do you guys want to have since it's going to go to the next meeting, do you want to have a site visit or anything, or drive by on your own, or did you want me to organize anything for you to take a look?
Well, we can definitely have Elaine go back out since she's already looked at the trees and familiar, but I mean, if anybody wants to have a site visit, we can certainly do that. Or, to your point, we could go by on our own. But it is behind that building, it looks like, so, you know, we would have to get access behind it potentially.
I think Elaine should go again. I know she's been out, but is she clear what trees are involved? And to give us a recommendation, you know, what she thinks. I know she's not an arborist, but just to give her, I guess, verbalize her put in writing her observations would be helpful, I guess.
Yeah, we do have the letter
Yeah.
from the certified.
Right.
I'd like to hear her recommendations
Right.
before we make a decision to see the site.
Yep. But she'll be at the next meeting, so there you go. Even Becca, maybe you can, ask her, you can contact the condo person. And just to make it clear that he should be at the next meeting.
Yep. Yeah, I maybe it's my fault because I assumed that Elaine had spoken to him. So that very well could be.
All righty, so this is for the next meeting then.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, we do have one other topic, it looks like, Coolidge Park. Are those-
That is going to be
I just had
postponed.
one more question.
Oh, sure, go ahead, sorry, Mark.
Yeah, it's okay. You know, they took the time to walk around the pond, survey all the land. There are trees down over here too, but they're not on the list. There's been one hanging into a tree. You know, there are kids that go out there and skate. That tree could come down on them.
Is that on
You know,
the
so-
Heron Pond property or not?
It would be on the Heron Pond property.
All right, so,
And also there was a tree, very large pine tree that came down a year ago. And I'm the one that paid to have it removed. It was on their property. So it just doesn't all add up to me, to go and stake all this and they ignored all the other trees, but only the ones on their side. So they're obviously looking to do something more than just tree cutting here.
Well, do you know who put the stakes out there? If it was Heron Pond or someone from Chapman Road?
It was Heron Pond. I think it's called, is it Briggs? Yeah.
Well, why don't we have Elaine come in? Why don't we have Elaine come?
The management company. It's the management company in Arlington. Briggs Management, something like that.
They're all out of the meeting today.
Why don't we have Elaine find out, who's putting the stakes out there? Then we can figure out what to do from there.
Yeah.
And, they should be told in the future to provide some notification because, honestly, I don't want them walking down on my property with nobody even knows who they are, what they're doing. It's very unprofessional.
You know they're on your property though, right?
No, they had to have gone through
But other than that,
my property to get there.
You know where they are, that they're on your property.
They had to, yeah, unless they swam across the pond.
Well, is the pond frozen though? Could they?
Well, they could walk across the pond.
Right.
No, you wouldn't. You'd sink. It's, you'd go down into the mud. You wouldn't
Okay.
make it.
All right.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna have Elaine go back out there and see what she can find out and give us a location of those trees and, take a look at the pond.
Anything else on the agenda, Rebecca?
So Coolidge Park is going to be postponed as well. I did speak with a homeowner today, so he is aware of that. Elaine had been trying to get in touch with him. His voicemail was full, and then he gave a call back, and he has since gotten. He will get in touch with Elaine. He has her contact information, so that will probably be on the next one.
All right.
Bob, you need a motion?
Well, hang on. Is that it, Rebecca, for you?
I think that's it for me. The only thing I was going to say is I was just looking at the outlet to Heron Pond, and it looks like yeah, there's I have to look at it more in depth, but it looks like there's some catch basins at the end of Chapman Road that go into a pipe, and it actually looks like it then goes down. Hold on, let me tell you the name of the street.
Yeah, I have some recollection that there's drainage from Chapman Road into Heron Pond, right?
Yeah, and then it goes to Hartshorn Road. That's what it looks like from here. This, I'm not 100% sure. This is just a mapping that they have, and then it connects over to, it gets discharged and it connects to wetlands over by Beech Tree and Andrews.
Yeah, wasn't this a lawsuit between the town and someone and Bob, do you remember?
Fidelity, wasn't it?
Fidelity, yeah.
Yeah.
Because who's going to control the water going out of Heron Pond?
Yeah.
It was on the town property, something. We should find out about that.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that, but it was before my time.
Yeah, we walked Hartshorn Road and where that outlet is 20 something years ago. Yeah.
It's interesting because was it regulated as bordering land subject or isolated land subject to flooding?
Well, when the project went through, we had an agreement that we would consider it all BVW.
It should be actually, only because if you look at the historic USGSs, it shows the old wetland and the connections through the streams.
Yeah, well, one person was saying that there was no connection and the other person was saying there was. That was the issue. Because one person wanted to keep the water in the pond because they wanted because it looked good,
Yeah.
The other person wanted it out.
How'd it end up?
Is that right, Bob?
Yeah, I think you are right.
Huh?
How'd it end up?
Yeah. I don't remember now.
Okay, I'll look it up. I was just curious.
Yeah. I think it's kind of ironic that on the other side of Salem Street, the issue is too much water everywhere. All the neighborhoods are complaining of too much water. And now we have a pond that's dried up that's kind of in the vicinity of it all.
Well, Gene Jeffrey put a mark on one of the rocks out there, and that was the gauge that we went by to know if the water was at the right height.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, wasn't there something about the elevation to be maintained or something?
Yeah, you got me thinking, maybe. Yeah,
Okay, well, Rebecca's on it.
there's a research project for you.
I already have a lot to do and people are already complaining I don't do it fast enough. So I don't know if I can do something else.
I'm gonna clone you.
Haley, you had a question?
No, I just really wanted to be the one to make the motion.
Oh, no.
Oh, I just want, can I say something first?
We're
You
not
don't
quite
want to be
there.
that person. You don't want to be that person.
We're not
Peter
quite
was
there
jumping
yet.
all over it. I'm
We-
gonna
we-
take it.
we
That's
have-
gonna be my very first motion.
Judy
We
wants
have-
When we get there.
You know what? I'm gonna
No,
back
I
off.
wanted to say something
Yes,
first.
we got
Right.
one more very important person. I haven't asked if she
Right.
has anything to
Thank you,
share, and
Bob.
that would be Judy.
I just wanted to say the last master plan group hearing was last week, and they have the survey online now on the town website. And the
Oh,
open
okay.
space plan meetings are coming up in March. So get your ideas ready.
Okay.
Anything else, Judy?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you.
Now, Haley.
So hang on.
This is it, your big moment.
Peter might jump in really fast, so.
Nope. I'm standing down.
Would
Oh, shit.
somebody like to
Different.
make a motion to
Ready to
adjourn?
go. I would like to make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Haley,
Yes.
Jimmy,
Yes.
Ken,
Haley, you're too anxious to get out of here.
Ken,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
and I also vote to adjourn. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.